Well, when we went to Syria, it was sometime in October, and the situation was getting very tense there. So our flight arrived at around 3 in the morning. So you can imagine the surprise and the shock of the security forces when 3 foreign journalists arrived at a time when there was a media ban. It's international journalists there.
Well, we're here in the center of the Syrian capital. You can see behind me, traffic is just about starting to flow again.
Going into the city, Damascus was rather peaceful. It was quiet, although very tense still, because everybody knows what was going on in the country. And what's interesting, I think, mostly for us is that we saw the kind of diverse opinions on what was going on. There was no clear 2 sides even. There were more than 2 sides. It was not, I want the regime or I don't want the regime. And there was one time we were interviewing a young man, and he was rather critical of the government, so he gave his point of view. And what you didn't see on the camera is that there was a group of men around him and us listening to what he was saying. And afterwards, after the interview was finished, they all came up to us and said, "Get us on camera. We want to say what we feel." And then we also spoke to those people who were protesting, specifically those who were on the streets in Harasta, that's about 20 minutes outside of Damascus. One of the guys that we interviewed, he actually disappeared for 2 days, and he said he was held by security forces, he was beaten up.
After 48 hours of detention and torture, they took all of my money and belongings and threw me out into the street.
We also spoke with soldiers' families, those who had been killed. And you can also feel that they are angry at the protesters because their sons have been lost, their fathers have been lost, husbands have been lost, and you can understand the point of view that they're coming from.
How can soldiers kill other soldiers? This is impossible. Whatever media says this is plainly lying.
Speaking about fear, okay, I'll tell you one incident. We were supposed to interview one of the leaders of the National Coordination Council, the local opposition. The interview was set, and when we called him, he said, "I might have to cancel because there were security forces, we think, who were at the office, and they wrote some threats on the wall." We had our fixer who translated what it meant. It said, "You're working for Israel in the US. We're going to kill you." And so they were direct threats at the members of the NCC, particularly the leader. That was a scary time because they were just outside. We didn't know whether they would come in. And we asked our interviewee, "Are you scared?" And he said, "You only die once." So the Syrians are I felt, hospitable people, but when it comes to political talk, when it comes to expressing a political view in a crowd, it can really get heated. They would jostle. At the rally that we went to, it got pretty rough. Our camera was broken at some point. But that is your job. You go in there, you try to do what you can. You try to film as much as you can, try to put it in as much context. And we had to sometimes tell people, please calm down, otherwise we can't get anything on film.
We're here in the center of the Syrian capital where thousands have gathered to show their support for the government. Now this is a far cry from the images we've been seeing in other cities in the country where there have been reported clashes between security forces and anti-government protesters. However, one thing is clear though, no matter where in this country.
Whenever there'd be news about Syria or whenever we would be airing news about Syria, I would really pay attention and bother everybody here and say, "I don't think that's correct, I don't think that's not as precise as I think it was." So I'd like to think that because of my trip there and my experience there, that when I see something about Syria, I don't take it at face value. I remember everything that I'd gathered and would look through it through that perspective rather than just what I see.